All right. So instead of doing this right after the exam, when you guys are all tired, we'll try to do this now, and then you guys can watch it at your own leisure, and get yourself familiar with the material. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, the lymphatic system. Okay. Slideshow. Okay. The purpose of the lymphatic system, the original purpose of the lymphatic system is to return the excess fluid from the blood's vascular system. So the capillaries in the vascular system leak, right? Just a little bit, right? And so the lymphatic vessels collect the tissue fluid. So let's look at a picture of what that does. Okay, so here's your capillary bed. You can see in between the capillary beds are these green vessels, these lymphatic vessels. These lymphatic vessels just have one-way valves that allow the excess fluid around the cells here to drain into the capillary bed. Okay, this is the lymphatic capillary bed. Okay. Okay, but this fluid will slowly return to the heart, but it's moving slowly, much more slowly than the bloodstream. Okay, this gives it time. Okay, so our immune system can look at this fluid much better than it can look at blood. Okay, blood is moving too quickly. Okay, so the lymphatic system works very slowly, so the immune system can check on the lymph flowing through our body and see if there's any microorganisms or viruses and stuff growing there. Okay. Okay. So the lymphatic vessels collect the tissue fluid from loose connective tissue. Okay. Remember that the loose connective tissue has a whole bunch of holes and empty spaces where fluid can flow, and that means fluid can drain into the lymphatic vessels. Okay, the smaller vessels drain into larger vessels, which drain larger vessels. Eventually, they carry the fluid all the way back into the bloodstream, and they drain into the neck. Okay, lymph only flows in one direction, and that's toward the heart. Okay, it is not a circle. It's not a circulatory system. Okay, it's only a one-way direction. Okay, so they collect the tissue fluid and blood proteins, and they return the tissue fluid and blood proteins to the bloodstream. Okay, I don't care about capillaries, collecting vessels, trunks, ducts, etc., etc. That's not really important. Okay, so what these capillaries do is they collect tissue fluid, and embedded in that tissue fluid is the bacteria, viruses, cancer cells, etc., etc. Okay, in the digestive tract, you have specialized lymphatic capillaries called lacteals. Lacteals will pick up fat. Okay, the digestive system is easier to you can transport proteins, and you can transport sugars in your bloodstream relatively easily. Fat is actually a little bit harder, so the lacteals actually transport fat. Okay. Okay. The lymphatic vessels themselves, okay, are actually modified veins. Okay, except they have even more valves because there's no pump. Remember, so to make the fluid move, you have to have a lot of valves that prevent backflow. That forces the lymph to only flow in one direction. Okay, so the flow of lymph is not aided by the heartbeat. It's actually propelled by three weaker mechanisms: skeletal muscles. So when you walk, when you move around, when you flex your muscles, okay, it causes the lymph to move, okay? So if you have like swollen joints and stuff like that, and you walk around on it, it actually kind of helps drain the excess, okay? The pulsing of nearby arteries, the pulse of the artery literally pushes on the lymphatic vessels, and that causes the fluid to flow, okay? And the tunica media of the lymph vessels themselves, the tunica media actually contracts and expands, okay? All right. One thing you definitely do have to understand in the chapter is what the lymph nodes do. Okay, the lymph node cleanses the lymph of pathogens. Okay, there are three main clusters. Okay, cervical, okay, axillary, and inguinal. Okay, cervical is your neck, axillary is armpit, inguinal is groin. Okay, if you see like, if you look up old pictures of bubonic plague and stuff, you'll see people with swollen lymph vessels, lymph nodes in their neck and stuff. Okay. Okay. There's the deeper ones. Okay. What a lymph node looks like. Okay. Let me just show you. This is what a lymph node looks like. Okay. It looks sort of like a little kidney bean. Okay. You have afferent vessels and efferent vessels. Afferent flow into the lymph node, efferent flow away from the lymph node. Okay, so there are more afferent than efferent, which means the lymph, when it comes in, it has to circulate to get through here, and they have to bump into each other. The fluid has to bump into each other. All that is by design, okay? You have these germinal centers. The germinal centers are where the white blood cells actually hang out. Okay, you guys learned in the blood chapter, white blood cells are what fights infections. Well, the lymph brings in the infection, the viruses, the bacteria, and stuff like that, and it makes it flow past the germinal center. Okay, and in the germinal center, just white blood cells hanging out minding the business. Okay, and if a virus and bacteria flow past it, if they're able to recognize the virus and bacteria, they can mount the immune defense against it. Okay, so that's what's happening. Okay, okay, this is actually the lymph node. Okay, this is what the tissue inside a lymph node looks like. If you recall all the way back to week 2, when I talked about reticular connective tissue, I said it was perfect for macrophages and things to communicate with one another, and it looks like a mesh fiber. This is exactly what I was talking about. You have a whole bunch of white blood cells, so macrophages, lymphocytes, okay, they're communicating with one another, and they're bumping into one another, okay? Somewhat randomly, but the interactions are actually important. Okay. Okay. I don't care about the trunk, so you skip the slide. Okay. All right. Ducts. Okay. For lymphatics, I care much more about how it works. Okay. The immune system. The immune system recognizes specific foreign molecules. Okay. So the immune system kicks in usually after your first 2 lines of defense have been penetrated. Okay. So it's gotten through your skin. It's gotten past the neutrophils and macrophages. Now, if you don't kill it, it's will wreak havoc on your body. Okay. The key cells of the immune system are called lymphocytes, as they primarily hang around in lymph nodes and in the lymphatic tissue. Okay. Okay. The lymphatic tissue consists of the lymphoid organs and lymphoid tissue. So the lymphoid organs, lymph nodes, spleen, thymus, tonsils, aggregated lymphatic nodules, appendix. Okay. So an infectious organism will trigger an inflammatory response. Okay. The inflammatory response is the swelling, the heat, the pain, okay, and the loss of function. Okay. Organisms are attacked by macrophage, like neutrophils, and then macrophages, and then lymphocytes. Okay. Okay. Lymphocytes effectively recognize a specific foreign molecule. Okay. That foreign molecule is called an antigen. Okay. Antigens are any molecules that induce a antibody response. Antigen literally means antibody generating. Okay, antibody generating responses. So it is not coronavirus that's an antigen. It's bits and pieces of the coronavirus that are antigens. Okay, there's a lot of sites on the coronavirus that are antigens. Okay. All right, lymphocytes break down into B cells and T cells. Okay, the cytotoxic T cells, okay, attack foreign cells directly. So the way I like to visualize this, really, from the point of your immune system, there's only two things in your body: a bunch of cells and a bunch of fluid. Okay, the T cells attack cells. Okay, cytotoxic. Okay, they attack cells. Okay, they bind to antigen-bearing cells. So if a cell is infected by a virus, that antigen will be expressed on the surface of the cell. And the T cell will recognize it, and it will tell that cell to kill itself. Okay, it will punch a hole in the cell membrane, and then it will tell the cell to kill itself. Okay, so the cytotoxic T cells will destroy virus-infected cells and some cancer cells. Okay, the B cells or B lymphocytes, they actually attack the fluid. Okay, so the blood, the lymphatic fluid. Okay, the external lining of the intestines, like fluid. Okay, so plasma cells secrete antibodies. These cells mark cells by destruction by macrophages. Okay, they respond primarily to bacteria and bacterial toxins. Bacteria, for the most part, don't go inside our cells. They stay outside, so they're in the fluid, so they're attacked by the B cells more than the T cells. Okay, bacterial toxins like tetanus toxin, it flows around in the fluid. So again, the plasma cells make antibodies that attach to toxins or bacteria. Okay. So here you can see the picture that explains it all. So T cells bind to the antigen. So that little, you see how this thing looks like a little cup, and there's a little ball inside the little cup. That little ball is the antigen. The T cell will recognize the antigen, and if it recognizes the antigen, it will tell the cell to commit suicide. Okay, these B lymphocytes, okay, once they recognize there's an antigen, it will turn into a plasma cell. A plasma cell will secrete antibodies. Okay, antibodies will bind to the bacterium, and they will cause macrophages to eat up the bacterium. Okay, so this not only works with bacteria, but also works with viruses that are floating around your bloodstream. Okay, that's why the antibody test for COVID-19 is the most important, because the antibody test will tell you that you had the virus at some point in your bloodstream. So if you had it before, that means, and you have the antibodies floating around, that means you're probably immune against it. Okay. Okay. These lymphocytes need to be activated. Let's just stop sharing. Okay. These lymphocytes need to be activated. Okay. The T cells, the T lymphocytes are activated in the thymus gland. Okay. The B cells are activated in the bone marrow. Okay. So easy way to remember: T for thymus, T cells are activated in the thymus. B for bone marrow, B cells are activated in the bone marrow. Okay. Once the activated lymphocytes are able to recognize a unique antigen, they gain immunocompetence. So basically, they learn how to do their job. Okay, and then so they gain immunocompetence and they travel through the bloodstream and then find a specific antigen. Okay, and then they proliferate rapidly. Okay, so let me explain that, what that means. So you have these activated cells that are able to recognize a specific antigen, one specific thing, okay, and it'll flow through the bloodstream. And if it doesn't recognize anything else, it's fine. It will just eventually die. If it does meet that very specific antigen it was trained to recognize, it will turn on, it will activate itself, and it will make many copies of itself, all of which can bind to that specific antigen. That's what proliferate means. It means make many copies of itself. Many copies of itself that all bind to the same antigen. Okay? During activation, the lymphocyte is presented as antigen by a macrophage or dendritic cells. Dendritic cells, if you guys remember that from the skin chapter, is in the layers of the epidermis. It recognizes, it picks up cells and presents it to lymphocytes. Okay? Okay. When it makes many copies of the self, it makes two types of copies. One are called effector cells or effector lymphocytes, and the other type are called memory cells. The effector cells, do their thing. They respond immediately. So effector B cells make large amounts of antibodies. Effector T cells go around your body and kill everything that is infected. Okay, so they take care of this infection. About 10% of the cells become memory cells. Okay, memory cells do not do anything the first time around. Okay, they just really go into your lymph nodes and hang around. They don't do anything. Okay, but the memory cell is like a lymphocyte with a hair trigger. Okay, if you get that same disease a month later, it goes off like gangbusters. It makes many more clones of itself, and the many more clones produce even more antibodies. So you're producing literally 1,000 times as much antibodies. I'm underestimating more than I'm overestimating the amount of antibodies. Okay, 1,000 times more antibodies, and it works faster. Okay, you acquire, once you have once you see it once, the reason why you usually never get the disease over again is because your immune system is on a hair trigger for that one particular disorder, one particular disease, and if you get it, it'll fight it off very quickly. Okay, so instead of taking 10 days to ramp up your immune system, it takes 3. Okay. Okay. So here, this is the origin. So the maturation, and then this is, like I said, this is where they hang out and stuff like that. And then once it recognizes the antigen, it starts to proliferate like crazy. Okay. Okay. So lymphoid tissue. Okay. Lymphoid organs are split into 2 groups: primary lymphoid organs, secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs, bone marrow and thymus. These are where the lymphocytes are trained, so the school. The secondary lymphocyte, the secondary lymphoid organs are the work, where you go to work, where you do your job. Okay, so the primary lymphoid organs are where your training occurs. The secondary lymphoid organs are where the work occurs. Okay. Okay. So thymus here, bone marrow, you can see in this picture. The tonsils are here. The spleen is right here. The aggregated lymphoid nodules, okay, or Pyrus patches in the small intestine right here. Your appendix is right there. Okay, so thymus, a site where immature lymphocytes develop into T cells. They secrete thymic hormones that stimulate the thymus. They're most active in childhood. This is why, as a child, especially as an older child, like before puberty. Okay, technically your childhood ends before puberty. Okay, from an immune point of view, your childhood ends before puberty, not a neurological one. Okay, so your thymus is most active at about 9, 10, right before you hit puberty, and that is when you are least likely to be sick. Okay, and you get healthy faster. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, lymph nodes. Okay, we already talked about that earlier. The spleen. The spleen is the largest lymphoid organ. It actually has 2 blood cleaning functions. Okay. So let's look at it. So, okay. The spleen is divided into 2 portions: white pulp and red pulp. Okay, the white pulp is for white blood cells. Okay, it provides the immune function of the spleen. It's where a lot of the B cells mature into plasma cells. Okay, they are also the storage of platelets. Okay, the red pulp. Okay, red pulp is for dealing with red blood cells. Okay, it is the red blood cell graveyard. Okay. So, red pulp, white pulp. Okay. Tonsils. Okay. Tonsils are kind of there. So there's tonsils. You'll see they go in a ring around your respiratory and digestive tract entryway. So when you swallow stuff or when you breathe in stuff, it's an early warning signal going to your body going, okay, these are the crap I just swallowed, or these are the bacteria I just breathed into my lungs. Okay, So that's what that's for. The aggregated lymphoid nodules in the small intestine, they're called Pyrus patches. Okay, they are for again fighting bacteria that's made its way into your intestines. Okay. Okay. Along with the appendix, the same thing. They're actually has the immune system function. Okay. We'll skip disorders. All right. So that's it for this chapter. Okay.